Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Session 44. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulihil Kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man istanna bi sunnatihi ila yawmiddin. This is session 44 of our series in the names of Allah. And in this session, we'll be looking at two names, similar in meaning, Al-Qawiyy and Al-Mateen, the powerful and the invincible. In terms of their Quranic locations, the divine name Al-Qawiyy is mentioned 9 times in the Quran. Among them is, وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ Inna Allah laqawiyyun aziz. They have not judged Allah appropriately. Indeed, Allah is all-powerful and mighty. That's Surah Al-Hajj, 22nd chapter, verse 74. In the case of the divine name Al-Mateen, it is mentioned only once in reference to Allah in the Quran. Inna Allah huwa ar-razzaqu dhul quwwatil mateen. Indeed, it is Allah who is the continual provider, the firm possessor of strength. Surah Al-Dhariyat 51 verse 58. In terms of the meaning, linguistically, Qawi comes from the triliteral root Qaf, Waw, Ya, the verbal noun being quwwa, quwwatun. It has 3 meanings. The first of which is to be strong or to have sufficient power. The second meaning is to be robust, hardy, or sturdy. And the third meaning is to prevail. This root appears 42 times in the Quran in 3 different derived forms. Mateen, on the other hand, linguistically comes from the triliteral root mim, ta, nun, the verbal noun being matnun. And it has 4 basic meanings. The first meaning is to be strong, firm, and hard. The second meaning is to be solid or robust. The third meaning is to be steadfast and determined and sure. And the fourth meaning is to possess any quality of strength to a strong degree. Mateen is the present participle in the fa'il intensive form. This root also appears 3 times in the Quran in the same derived form. Now, relative to Allah, Al-Qawiyy means the undefeatable, whose decisions no one can reject. His attribute of ultimate strength neither diminishes and is never followed by periods of rest. Everything in the heavens and on earth must submit to the complete, irresistible strength of Al-Qawiyy. If he snatches anything, it is destroyed, as he destroyed the ancient nation of Thamud and the city of Pompeii that we spoke about in earlier sessions. The divine name Al-Mateen, relative to Allah, means the solid and the steadfast, having unsurpassed power and ability to do as he wishes. Al-Mateen is one possessing the ultimate power and absolute firmness. This combination of complete strength and infinite firmness means that none can stop his actions or prevent his orders from being carried out. Consequently, the divine name Al-Qawiyy describes Consequently, the divine name Al-Qawiyy describes Allah's inexhaustible strength, whereas the divine name Al-Mateen refers to his supreme firmness and steadfast determination, which easily overcomes everything. As Allah said, Inna Allaha huwa ar-razzaqu dhul quwwati al-mateen. Indeed, it is Allah who is the continual provider, the firm possessor of strength. Al-Qawiyy and other divine names. Al-Qawiyy is very similar or shares meanings with Al-Jabbar, Al-Qahhar, Al-Aziz. All of them address issues of power, strength, and dominance. Allah's name Al-Qawiyy is most often paired with his divine name of might and power, Al-Aziz, the Almighty. 6 of 9 times in which Al-Qawiyy is mentioned, it's paired with Al-Aziz. Having both power and strength is only suitable for those who are also noble and wise. Al-Qawiyy uses his strength in the most honorable ways, and his perfect might is always used to set things right. This combination is most often used in the context of Allah strongly supporting the believers against the tyrants and the unjust, while using his might to severely punish them. In terms of the plan of Al-Mateen, Allah Al-Mateen informs us that sometimes He lets people engage in corruption. Those who are engaged in corruption, He lets them go free for a while as part of His wise long-term plans for their reformation or punishment. The extra time gives people an additional chance to think, rethink, and decide as the events of their lives unfold, whether to turn to the truth of Islam or to become even more misguided. Allah said in Surah Al-Qalam, وَأُمْلِي لَهُمْ إِنَّ كَيْدِي مَتِينٌ. I will give them more time. Indeed, my plan is firm. Allah also says, the believers should not think that my postponing their punishment is good for them. I only postpone punishment that they may increase in sinfulness. That's in Surah Ali Imran, verse 178. Some people might disbelieve and oppose Islam for a number of years, and then eventually find guidance. For example, Joram van Klaveren, who was a member of parliament for Geert Wilders' far-right Dutch Freedom Party, the PVV, from 2010 to 2014, he announced in 2019 his conversion to Islam. Previously, as a PVV politician, he was a harsh critic of Islam, publicly claiming that Islam is a lie. The Quran is poison. Geert Wilders, a 49-year-old politician, had gained notoriety in Europe and beyond in recent years for his strident criticism of Islam, arguing that moderate Islam does not exist, and that Muhammad, if he were alive today, he would be hunted down as a terrorist. He also campaigned against the Islamification of Europe and called for a ban on the Quran, which he has compared to Hitler's Mein Kampf. That's his book expressing his ideas, Hitler's ideas. However, Van Claveringen made the switch from critic to convert while writing a book against Islam. He said, "During my research, I came across more and more things that made my negative views on Islam falter." Following Van Claveringen, his announcement, Arnoud van Doorn, another former PVV official who was an earlier convert to Islam, congratulated Van Claveringen on his decision by way of Twitter, writing, "I never thought that the PVV would become a breeding ground for converts." In December 2011, the PVV broke ties with Van Doorn, who decided to become a Muslim a few months later and publicly announced his conversion to Islam in April 2012. Soon after that, he performed Hajj to Saudi Arabia and visited the Prophet ﷺ's mosque. He said that the overwhelming global reaction of Muslims around the world against the highly controversial film Fitna, which Geert Wilders made and Van Doorn helped distribute, made him curious to learn more about Islam and eventually led to his decision to convert to Islam. He stated, "Right now I'm still feeling regret for having distributed the film. I have a responsibility to correct the mistakes that I have done in the past." 2 years later, in 2014, his eldest son, Iskander Amin de Vries, also followed him in converting to Islam. For myself, though my own parents welcomed my conversion to Islam from communism in 1972, it took them 21 years to finally convert in 1993. It was only after living in Sabah, Malaysia, where they adopted an Indonesian son, Muslim, living in Gombe, Nigeria, where they taught Muslim teachers, living in Riyadh and Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, where they set up and ran the English section of the Manar to Riyadh International Islamic School, and editing some of my books, notably The True Religion of God and the Evolution of Fiqh, that they finally made the decision to convert after returning to Canada. Allahu Akbar. May Allah grant them both gardens in paradise. After they had read and revised The True Religion of God, I asked them to edit it and raise any issues and questions they had concerning it. And after they revised it a few times and they came up with a final version, I asked them, is everything in it is now reasonable, logical, makes sense? And they said, yes, it's fine now. It's excellent. So I said, so why don't you become Muslims? So at that point, they were embarrassed to some degree. My mom blushed and they said, okay, give us a Quran. So this began their own steps. At other times, Al-Mateen gives the disbelievers a longer time to live, but they simply carry on doing evil until they die and are thereby punished even more severely. This extension from Al-Mateen also means that the believers will have a greater chance to get more rewards and earn higher ranks in paradise through their struggles. Thus, the plan of Allah is solid from whichever angle it is viewed. Moving on now to the application, in accordance with Ibn Battal's 4 principles, the first of which is adopt where applicable. We do so by being strong and firm believers. This is the attribute of Allah, that He is strong and firm in everything that He does. For us, in terms of our belief, we apply that to ourselves by being strong and firm believers. These divine names, Al-Qawiyy Al-Mateen, may be applied by simply being strong and firm believers who stand up for Islam and its teachings of righteousness and justice. This kind of strength and firmness does not require blind fanatical reactions in defense of Islamic symbols, but a firm stance in both the defense and promotion of Islamic teachings and ideals based on proper knowledge of Islam. Abu Huraira quoted the Prophet ﷺ as saying, "Al-mu'minu al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allahi min al-mu'min al-da'if wa fi kullin khayr." The strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer, though there is good in both of them. There are many cultural Muslims around the world who may drink alcohol, fornicate, steal, and lie, but if anyone says anything bad about Islam, they're ready to kill them or die trying to kill them. This is not Islamic strength. It's blind cultural nationalism. This is not the strength about which the Prophet ﷺ spoke. To further clarify this point, Abu Huraira quoted the Prophet ﷺ as saying, "ليس الشديد بالسرعة إنما الشديد الذي يملك نفسه عند الغضب." The truly strong man isn't the winning wrestler, but he is the one who controls himself when he gets angry. This is real strength. That strength is fundamentally inner spiritual and emotional strength. It is the strength of faith. It is the strength of faith for which Sumayya and Yasir became the first martyrs among the followers of the Prophet ﷺ. Sumayya and Yasir were among the early converts to Islam in Mecca, who resisted the extreme torture of their Meccan slave masters until they died without renouncing their faith. Whenever the Prophet ﷺ helplessly passed by them during their torture, he promised both of them paradise, saying, "Isbiru ala Yasir, inna maw'idukumul jannah." Be patient, people of Yasir. Indeed, your appointment is in paradise. It is also the strength of the greatest martyr ever, according to the Prophet ﷺ, in which time, in a time to come, a young believer will publicly confront Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal, the Antichrist, and accuse him of falsehood when he claims to be God. He claims to the whole world that he is God. The Dajjal will react immediately by viciously slicing his body into two halves. And he will do that in front of everyone, from the middle of his head to his crotch. When the two halves fall to the ground, the Antichrist will proudly walk between them, command them to rejoin, and he will call the young man back to life. However, when he instructs the resurrected youth to declare his belief in Dajjal as God, the youth will reply, "I've only become more certain that you are false." Then the young man will turn and publicly announce to everyone, "O people, he won't be able to do this to anyone after me." Dajjal will then angrily grab him by his neck and attempt to chop off his head. But a rubber band, a copper band, will appear around the youth's neck and prevent him from doing so. Thoroughly frustrated, Dajjal will then grab the young man's hands and feet and toss him into his river of fire which follows him wherever he goes. It will appear to the masses that the fire consumed the bold young believer, but according to the Prophet ﷺ, he actually fell directly into paradise. Following that explanation, the Prophet ﷺ said, هذا أعظم الناس شهادة عند رب العالمين. This young man is the greatest martyr in the sight of Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Therefore, it is possible for us to apply these two names, Al-Qawiyy and Al-Mateen, by being firm believers and strong Muslims in all the most important aspects of strength and firmness, whether physical, mental, emotional, moral, psychological, and most importantly, spiritual. For example, on the physical level, we should be healthy and physically strong enough to be able to defend ourselves and our families and communities, and to perform the various acts of physical worship like daily prayers, fast, pilgrimage, etc. On a mental level, we should be secular. On a mental level, we should be securely and religiously educated sufficiently enough to become a productive member of society, to be able to fulfill our religious obligations, requiring abilities like calculating, zakah, and to be able to look after our families when and if needed. That's the mental level. On an emotional level, we should be psychologically well equipped to handle or control our myriad of emotions: love, hate, worry, disappointment, happiness, sadness, etc. And to display the best moral characteristics in all our varying interactions with Allah's creatures. On a spiritual level, we should understand and implement the faith-based religious teachings, prayers, fasting, zakah, etc., to implement them properly and consistently in order for them to have a beneficial impact on our hearts and souls. In application, we should also strive for justice. Allah Al-Qawiyy, the strongest, detests strength based on tyranny and injustice. The Prophet ﷺ had said, "No nation is blessed unless its weakest members can demand their rights without hesitation." Regarding himself, Allah stresses throughout the Quran that He does not and will not oppress anyone. وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا. And your Lord does not oppress anyone. We should strive to be people who find it important to be fair in even the smallest of matters, and to inspire others to be just and to stand up for the rights of the weak. Allah described the Muslim nation as one following the middle path or the golden mean, and warned against excess and extremism. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. Thus I have made you a justly balanced nation, to be a witness for the nations, and the messenger a witness for you. This divinely ordained balance can only be maintained through proper knowledge of the religion, for ignorance always produces and provides a fertile ground for deviation and extremism. We should apply these names by being firm and strong in following the right path. The divine name Al-Mateen, the firm, should also inspire us to hold on firmly to the religion at all times, and to be determined to follow the straight path with the correct understanding of Islam. For staying firmly on the straight path of Islam, it requires us to hold on firmly to the Quran and the Sunnah, as stated by the Prophet ﷺ, تَرَكْتُ فِيكُمْ أَمْرَيْنِ لن تضلوا ما تمسكتم بهما كتاب الله وسنة نبيه. I have left with you two things. If you hold on firmly to them, you will never go astray. The Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Prophet. Holding firmly to them means to hold on tightly to the Quran by striving to understand whatever we read in order to apply the orders and prohibitions and follow the guidance for our daily lives. Secondly, holding on firmly to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as understood and conveyed by his followers and the two generations following them and those who tried to follow them. As the Prophet ﷺ had said, خير الناس قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. The best of generations are mine, then those who follow them, then those who follow them. We should put our trust in Al-Mateen. This is how we apply this name, Al-Mateen. We put our trust in him. We become firm and strong after having held on firmly to the Quran and Sunnah by carrying the message of guidance to others. The Prophet ﷺ explained that the best Muslim is the one who not only learns the Quran but also teaches it to others. خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. The best of you are those who learn the Quran and teaches it to others. That is in keeping with Allah and His Messenger's instructions to share the message of Islam to the whole world. Allah said, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'idati al hasana." Call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and fair preaching. The Prophet ﷺ also said, "Ballighu anni walau aya." Convey from me whatever you have learned, even if it is only a single verse. Being busy with good deeds helps us to deflect Satan's constant attempts to sabotage our worship and lead us astray. Furthermore, being challenged by obstacles and stubborn people in our efforts to invite others to Allah will make us stronger in faith. فَلِذَلِكَ فَادْعُوا وَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. For that reason, call them to the faith and stand steadfast as you are commanded, as Allah said. How else can we become strong and firm believers? We can do so by being around firm and strong people. In order to be firm and strong as the two divine names require for the application by humans, we should surround ourselves with people who are themselves firm in Islam. Their firmness and strength will rub off on us, as the Prophet ﷺ explained in his parable about the perfume merchant and the blacksmith, which address the effect of good and bad friends. In case you haven't heard the parable or you've forgotten it, the Prophet ﷺ had said that the good friend is like a perfume merchant. When you are around him and he opens up the bottles of perfume, that smell will go on you. Or he will actually give you a bottle. In the case of the blacksmith, beating the iron, the hot iron, over on an anvil or whatever, sparks are flying, the bellows are pumped and smoke is all around. When you are close to such an individual, either you will leave with your clothes burnt, holes in it from the sparks, or at least you will stink of smoke. This was the example given by the Prophet ﷺ. And he told us to choose our friends carefully. saying, "Choose your friends well, for you will be raised on the day of judgment with your friends." We develop steadfastness also by depending on Al-Mateen. Calling on Allah to make us firm and steadfast in good and bad times should be in our daily prayers. The human heart changes rapidly and continuously, as the Prophet ﷺ said. The heart changes more often than a pot of rapidly boiling water. So let us memorize the popular prophetic supplication, if we haven't already done so, and implore Al-Mateen regularly for spiritual firmness from the bottoms of our hearts. Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. O turner of hearts, make my heart firm upon your religion. Furthermore, let us be really determined to get into paradise by reminding ourselves regularly that this world is only temporary. Our addiction to this world is what weakens us and causes us to compromise and to neglect different parts of Islam. It's because of that addiction. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ warned us of this world and its addictive nature. We should also depend on Al-Qawiyy for power. By ourselves, we have no power to obey Allah except by Allah's power and Allah granting us success. Likewise, by ourselves, we have no ability to evade sins and to repel the soul's evils except by Allah granting us permission and means. The Prophet ﷺ brought this to the attention of the Ummah in his statement to Abdullah ibn Qais, in which he said, "O Abdullah, would you like me to teach you a formula among the treasures of paradise?" Of course. Abdullah was eager. He said, "Say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah." There is no means nor might except by Allah. Imam An-Nawawi suggested that the reason for this short phrase being given the status of a treasure of paradise is because it is a statement of complete submission and turning over of one's affairs to Allah, admission of one's surrender to Him, recognition that there is no creator besides Him, acceptance that no one can refuse His command, and that His creatures own nothing of their affairs. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud had said that it meant that there is no means to escape the disobedience of Allah. La hawla. There's no means. Wala quwwata, and there's no power to obey Him except with His help. No means to escape the disobedience of Allah except by His allowance, and no power to obey Him except by His help. The second principle of Ibn Battal is to confirm where the name is unique and inapplicable to human beings. These two divine names address the unique power of Allah over all of His creation. We must confirm that only Allah has such power in order to worship Him through His divine names. Even the prophets did not have omnipotence, power over all things. So any attempt to give this power to Allah's creatures must be rejected completely. Inshallah, we will be looking into this in more detail in our next session. So we have just completed part 1 of session 44, and inshallah tomorrow we will continue with part 2. So here I will close this session. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, now is the time. We'll give about 10 minutes to questions, and then we will close up our session. Many salams coming from Hina Ahmed, Aurangzeb, Ahmed Khan, Tawfiq Akond, Assalamu alaikum, Idris Smith, Kamal, Muhammad Kamal from Bangladesh, Fatima Lawan, Maha Siddiqui, Bushra Ansari, Satriani from Indonesia, Chopan, Yusuf Mukhtar. Greetings to you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah bless you all. Rubina has a serious question about a serious matter. I guess it's a private question. Then you can add it and we'll try to get to it and find an answer for you, inshallah. Shafi'u Ahmed Omar, Barakallahu fikum, Jazana wa iyakum. Kabir Asyad, Mahmoud Abdul Rahim, Aruna Skipper, Tokir Arim, Firdaus Haq from Bangladesh, from Doha, Sabir Ali, Amadou, wa alaikum salam, John Paul Domingo, Ahlan wa sahlan, Susiana, Allah yabarak fiki, Asimini, wa alaikum salam wa rahmah, Hilda Musa from Indonesia, welcome. Carolee Stewart, wa alaikum salam. Farjana Chowdhury, barakallahu fikum, Allah protect you and your family. Khadija El Ghali, barakallahu fik, Allah protect us from addiction to this world. Okay, John Paul, I couldn't catch the first part of your question. Does Allah do that to humble us and remind us we're still human? Do what? If you're referring to His extension, should that humble us? Of course it should. If we're engaged in, misbehavior and, Allah's punishment doesn't come, we don't see it happening, we should be humbled by it and turn back to Allah. Because if we don't get the punishment here, then it's coming there. Lubna Shirwani, sorry you missed the session. Anyway, it's recorded. You can go to Facebook and click on videos and catch it. This is number 44, session 44, part 1, and we'll be doing part 2 tomorrow. Munira Musa, Jazana Wayakum, Imam Abu Ramadan, Ahlan wa Sahlan, wa Alaikum Salam, Fatima Garba, Allah bless you also. Ibrahim is asking what is the difference between Khaliq and Bari. We discussed that in the name Al-Khaliq, Al-Khallaq. If you go back to the session, you can get the full details about that. And when we do Al-Bari, we will also be looking at that again there. Yes, John Paul. We know that after every difficulty comes ease, and after ease comes some difficulty. So, if we have been disobedient and things have seemed to have gone okay, let's not be fooled by it, thinking that, we got away. We just better thank Allah and get ourselves back on the right track. David Williams, Jazana Wayakum. Hilda Musa from Indonesia, Ahlan wa Sahlan. We have our degree program in Indonesian also. It's available. So if you'd like to study a bachelor's in Islamic studies in Indonesian, then Alhamdulillah, it is available. Bahasa. Okay, it's time to break the fast here, so I'll have to excuse myself now. As the Prophet ﷺ instructed us to hasten to break the fast, and thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you tomorrow. We'll try to do it earlier. I don't want to be so close to the breaking of the fast. At least this is for Ethiopia. For others, it may not be the case. Anyway, Barakallahu fikum, Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, fi aman al-kareem.